Good morning, afternoon and evening everyone. Hope we're all keeping well. So welcome back to the channel. In the previous video we kind of went through my initial mindset, show selection, etc., how I'm approaching this prep. Now we've actually gathered some headway. We're about 3.5-4 weeks into the prep itself and things are going really fucking smooth. So I'm super happy with this. I'm just growing with excitement and confidence as well, which is obviously a pretty big aspect. If you do have self-doubts about oneself, you're gonna not really commit to things as efficiently as you should, you know what I mean? So I think it is important to kind of have that level of true confidence, but also balance it out with like realistic expectations. Yeah, we are currently 3.5 weeks into this prep. We are 6.5-7 kilo down. I think from our highest we're actually 10 kilos down. That was obviously like peak off season, peak blast, highest drugs, etc. Now things have kind of simmered down a bit, and we've gotten a good bit of fat pulled off already. So I'll actually put some visuals up on screen as well, up here. But yeah, plan of action for today, it is a rest day. I'm not going to do like a full day of eating. I'll probably do that in the next one. But today we're going to go through pretty much just a Q&A. I put something out on my Instagram yesterday and got a good few questions, a nice balance between like prep, bodybuilding, personal stuff, etc. So we'll get into those shortly. As I said, rest day today, so I'm going to head off, get a haircut very shortly. Still not used to saying that. Hair transplant seems to be going well. About 5.5-6 months in, which I have questions on as well, which is cool. Didn't know people gave a shit about my personal life, so that's interesting. But yeah, I'll go clock a fresh trim in about 20 minutes. We'll come back, we'll go through the questions, and see you guys there. Yes people, what is good? As you can see, the fresh trim has most certainly been acquired and we are back in typical fitness YouTube fashion with a can of Monster. Big fan of that Rosa, much better than the white. After that, I'd probably be going mango. Let me know your top 3. As mentioned, quite a few questions in here, so we'll try and get through these without the video being too long. I might just chop and change any or just crop them out if they're not that interesting. I do appreciate all the interaction, so keep them coming. So, first question, how long have you been natural for? Obviously very satirical. I've been assisted about 6 years-ish, with some periods off, which again I do not recommend just going cold turkey. A lot of the stuff that I've learned, I did do a lot of my due diligence beforehand, but also a lot of the way I coach now is like teaching people from my mistakes. So next one, how much Superdrol is too much Superdrol? Trick question, there's not enough. What motivates you to never miss? Really like this question. I suppose you can look at this in 2 ways. Obviously a lot of what we do as bodybuilders is going to be very intrinsically insecurity driven. So I actually talked about this in a post yesterday, is that you're probably displaying some arrogance by not being locked in. If you feel like you can get away with not missing and you feel like you're still entitled to those results, that is definitely a form of arrogance. So if you are one who's like not really following a plan and getting frustrated, that is arrogance in my opinion. You have to respect the amount of work that goes into it, and that's what makes the end result so much better. But yeah, just being aware of where you actually lie on that genetic hierarchy. Obviously there's going to be people with better genetics than you. Being aware of that means that you don't really have time to be complacent if you are in any way serious about your goals. Follow-up question, what would you do if you missed? The biggest thing, and I always say this with clients, is literally just getting yourself straight back to it. If any compensations are needed, like I try not to make them excessive, but if you do need to make any compensations, to make them, obviously discuss this with your coach, especially if you are an erratic individual. Rock up, chill. Oh boy. If you are an erratic individual and someone who makes very emotionally driven decisions, it's really important for you to have a coach, because a lot of the time when you are emotionally volatile and if you're making decisions based off impulse and emotion, you're probably not making very well calculated, very well thought out decisions. What job would you do if it wasn't coaching? Very interesting one. So I've always really enjoyed coaching, so I've got my undergrad in sports science. Initially the plan was to go down the route of, Rocco, leave that pineapple plant alone. Thank you. The initial plan was to go down the route of sports coaching, working in S&C with like high level teams. Unfortunately, I found out that a lot of that was very much so driven around who you knew. And if you didn't have good ties, or if you didn't have a significant previous playing history at a high level, then it wasn't going to be that feasible. Otherwise, I am a bit of a numbers person, so I'd probably be very competent at something desk job, calculation based. Yeah, business, physics I'm a big fan of, maybe something down that route. How many trends make me big? All of them. Some of these are very good questions, very big thinkers. So if you could go back in time to any point in history, where would you go and why? I would have enjoyed for a short period of time, I'm not sure if this is in the context of living your life there, but not too far ago, but definitely before like so much technological advancement, maybe a stint in that kind of hippie area, 70s, 80s, very eye-opening stuff. How far do you see yourself taking bodybuilding, not coaching, long term? I try not to overthink this or place excessive expectations on my own like personal bodybuilding, because I really do enjoy the process and I like to see what comes of it. I think I've already surpassed where I genuinely believed I could be at this point in time anyway, and that's simply the slowest progress I've made was when I was constantly trying to anticipate or like meet up to like really high expectations, and then the most progress I've made, not that I've set my standards lower, but maintaining a high standard and just divorcing yourself of expectation, just going through the motions with like, whilst being present and focusing on what you need to do at that given point in time. I think by far that's the most progress I've made. So how that looks, I don't know. There is going to be a time frame like where you can actually continue to bodybuild and do so healthily. I reckon I will go down another avenue, and this is something I've discussed with the lads, so I don't think it'll be a massive issue. Like when we hang up the trunks, stop using gear, being more healthy, looking after stuff, and probably just pivoting into something more like endurance based, but still some competitive aspect and sports. But for my actual bodybuilding goals, I think the only thing I really have set now is like a PCA or FitX overall in maybe 3-year time. If I could do that, I think that would be a pretty significant win, especially at my age. Like I'm just gone 25, so to hit that by 27, 28 would be pretty cool in my opinion. What IFBB Pro would you say has similar structure to you that Aspire/could compare to? Is a very tricky one because I don't really resemble any IFBB Pro. Maybe I look a little bit like Yemi. That is complete sarcasm. I'm a big fan of Ian Valier. I think personality wise layers on top of it as well, and it's probably an influencing factor. But yeah, just that like really fucking dense tissue front to back. Side shots like is probably his best. Condition is usually very good. I know the last couple of years haven't been his sharpest, but I'm really looking forward to seeing him this year now. Favorite hobbies outside of bodybuilding is probably dogs, or playing my bass and reading quite a bit as well. I do find that very easy to pass the time doing so. Favorite cuisine, I'd probably go with sushi or burgers. I'm not like a massive foodie either. I suppose like what you miss in prep is like, I think a lot of people go down the route of like high food focus and like focusing on the food. If you set a lot of your priorities towards the social aspect of food, that's probably a better way to look at things. Like food will always be there, food will always be good, etc. But I think it's more so about the company you keep, being present in that moment. So yeah, just being able to go out and like enjoy a special occasion with the people around you is more so where my priorities lie. 5 dinner guests, dead or alive. It's going to be a very mixed bag. I'm not sure how they'd interact with each other. Jordan Peterson, Sir Alex Ferguson, Andrew Huberman, Jocko Willink and David Goggins. Was that 5 or 6? Yeah, I think that'd probably be it. Right, you had to go and come dine with me. What would you cook? Starters, main and dessert. This actually could tie into the cuisine thing. I think a Mexican is always a safe bet. Having a nice big spread there, some quesadillas to start. Dessert wise, I'm not sure how I would layer on top of the Mexican, but maybe a homemade carrot cake or cheesecake would be an enjoyable dessert for me. Experience with your hair transplant, cost, aftercare, worth it? Question mark. Honestly, just it was never something I was massively insecure about, which I've spoke about a few times, which is probably what made the decision much easier. I always assumed it'd be like 4 or 5 grand ish. Turned out it was only like £1,500, and then the only thing you have to cover on top of that is your flights. I went in December, so flights were like 160 quid, so you're saying about 1700 ish. It's fucking well worth it, man, especially if it is something that causes you any like mental distress. And I think for a lot of men it does. Luckily I was relatively happy shaving the head. The money I'd put away was just for tattoos, but then it was a very last minute decision. I think I booked it with like 2 weeks notice. So yeah, I'm very happy with it. I just kept shaving the head for a few months. I wasn't like micro-analysing, seeing how it is. As I said, that probably made it easier for me. Obviously if you're someone with longer hair and a bad hairline, probably going through that period of like just shaving it, mentally detaching slightly, getting the transplant, and then when it comes back it's like a nice gift on top of that, would probably be my recommendation how to go about it. Aftercare, a little bit awkward. Some time off training, time off cardio, relatively sore, and it gets mad fucking itchy. I think that's something people don't really say, but yeah, just making sure you don't fuck it up. Which Dara will come out on top on stage, myself or D-Mac? Let's find out. It's going to be fucking fun, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be cool because obviously he's like 2 floors below me, pretty much the exact same apartment, training together at the same times. Yeah, some fucking healthy competition, keep each other on top of our game, and that kind of speaks as well to everything that we're doing here with the rest of the lads, with Ryan, Joe, Jim, Keane, Ross, Mark. I feel bad if I've left someone else out, but like just being in that circle and everyone kind of checking each other, making sure we're bringing our best, it's really fucking cool, man. And that's the main reason I did choose to prep. I mentioned this in my last video as well, but it was more so like the life experience, because I know this is going to be a really cool thing to look back on. How the fuck did those pants fit you? Talking about my post and trunks. My waist comes in somehow. I know it's not tiny, but it does come in, and they're not comfortable. How to deal with the negative side effects of being an absolute unit? I don't know. Let me know if you find out, because it definitely has some side effects. Especially when you're pushing food, carrying around that body weight, just being really fucking tired all the time. Cardiovascular in the off season, obviously you want to keep some in, but still you just feel relatively unfit, and especially if you are someone who's had a sporting background and you're used to kind of feeling fresh, feeling on top of your game, it can be a little bit rough and like slightly demoralising at times. But I think if you just remember this current transient specific time frame that you have for something, like this isn't going to be your life forever, you know what I mean? So I think it is worthwhile just kind of sucking it up, going through it, and make sure you get what you can from this, rather than like constantly looking and saying, like, remember the grass is always greener, you know what I mean? So you'll always have that comparison. Same way if you did go and prioritise cardio, you'd be like, it'd be cool to feel jacked again. So it is important to remember that perspective. What books are you reading at the moment? So currently it is Becoming a Person by, oh my god, what the fuck's his name? I'm very disappointed I had to go check that. Carlton Rogers. Psychotherapist from the 60s, I believe. He's like the founding father of like the client-centered therapy, more so looking at it from like the individual's journey through psychotherapy. Very eye-opening stuff. I usually kind of oscillate between that kind of psychotherapy stuff, self-help, which I don't like saying too frequently, stoicism, some philosophy, and just some like neuroscience based stuff, something that really keeps my brain active. I don't really read much fiction, if any. No, I can't remember the last bit of fiction I've read. Why is pineapple so popular on prep? think it should be popular in off season as well. One of the main reasons we use it is high contents of bromelain, which is going to be a very useful digestive enzyme for breaking down protein. Obviously high protein intake with bodybuilding, so you want to make sure you're actually breaking that down and getting nutrients from it. I think maybe the craving, or people go to it more on prep just because it's like the fructose content and more water, rather than just, especially when food gets really low and it's just like chicken and veg. It's like, that's a quick bit of sugar, a good bit of fluid inside it that you're going to really enjoy. What questions are you asking yourself on a weekly, daily basis to keep on track and accountable? At a very basic level, just making sure that you've done all of your tasks for each day. On a weekly basis as well, I have my own like Google sheet where I'll go through, review the week, wins, losses, some business kind of stuff, a bit of a gratitude journal, and just reminding myself to be like very present, understanding the slight dichotomy in the fact that like there is this upcoming show, there is going to be this additional pressure, there is this valuable thing that you are working for, but also remember to like notice the little things along the way, and to just be really present, be appreciative of the people around you, appreciative of the opportunities you have. That is something that I've really, I think has kept my head right big time. I was going to go on to this, but I think it actually probably suits better in the next question. So what habits or changes have you made that you're proud of? The biggest one, I believe, this might change, but the biggest one is understanding that you can't and shouldn't be responsible for someone else's happiness. Obviously do everything you can to keep them happy, be judicious in how you talk to them. If you can positively influence someone else's life in some way, do so, but also remember to respect your own morals, your own values, and if that respect more than anything isn't being reciprocated, you shouldn't really have any guilt in detaching yourself. And yeah, I suppose guilt is the biggest thing to overcome. I've struggled with that for a long time, where I felt like I should be doing more for people around me, even if it wasn't being reciprocated. But yeah, just holding yourself to your own values, looking at what genuinely makes you happy, and not constantly analysing the status quo or social norms of what makes everyone else happy. Like, everything has to be a very individualistic approach. If it doesn't fulfill you, if it detracts from your life in any way, you shouldn't really have much guilt in taking that away. Being selfish when needed is a very selfless act. How are those pointy delts doing, bro? We'll find out. Hopefully I'm not marked down for them like someone on my Instagram said. Best pre-workout. My favourite is Yeti Juice by Gorilla Alpha, I believe, is one of my favourites, if not Alpha Lion Superhuman, either the pump or extreme pre. I think they're both very, very good, especially the pump. I don't really use any other pump formula. The Alpha Lion Superhuman pump, I'll put it up here. Flavours on them fucking bang, pumps are insane, focus is really good. So yeah, that would be my go-to. And I'll use a pump focus like 5-6 times out of 10. More than half the time it's the pump, so I'll go with that. What is your favourite part of prep? This might sound slightly arrogant or narcissistic, but I think just having a little bit more engagement, and obviously it's something not to have too high of an emotional attachment to. And this isn't the reason why I'm prepping, again, just to preface that. But being able to take pictures more regularly, more regular content, having a little bit more self-confidence, seeing visual changes more frequently, because obviously in and off season it's a slow trudge, you know what I mean? You're going through this months on end, not missing a meal, progressing all your sessions to look slightly different, or maybe look the exact same but just slightly bigger. Might be a little bit demoralizing. But yeah, I suppose just having that little bit more engagement, a few more eyes on you, maybe a few more followers, uptick in business, and then the kind of mental sharpness that invokes as well, that you're obviously being a little bit more selfish with your time when needed. You're not feeling as lethargic by trying to force feed a lot of food in all the time. More structure being imposed by like your cardio and steps, etc. So I think everything comes very routine, and there is that initial period, and it probably should actually last longer than what most people think, especially if your starting point is where it should be on a prep. But the first, I'd say 8 to 10 weeks, probably you'll see just an improvement and feeling better. Like, yeah, you will see some hunger at that point, don't get me wrong, but if you're starting to feel like shit and tired and ran down at like fucking 12 weeks out, you're probably fucked something along the way, or maybe B, your starting point was just like way too fat, and now that's the necessary steps it needs to take to get you to where you need to be. So yeah, mental sharpness, more engagement, being selfish with your time when needed, especially on that back end, and yeah, just kind of seeing some end result from it as well, and then getting on stage and being around a lot of very like-minded people, getting to see where you actually stand next to some people you might look up to. Yeah, that's pretty much my favourite part of prep. Heading towards 40, any age-specific advice in terms of maintaining muscle and managing body fat? So for you, John, obviously I know you well, I know your physique. Doesn't seem like you're doing anything wrong. I'd say for you to keep doing what you're doing. The main thing to remember is that tightness is a neurological response to weakness. So if you're weak in a certain area, usually in that lengthened, stretched part of position of a movement, if you're weak there, your body's going to start to tighten up, and then if you get tight and then you go into that position, that's when you're going to run into injuries. So if you're thinking more so from an injury avoidance perspective, it's not reducing load, it's not reducing volume per se, it'd be more so staying in control. Controlling your tempo is probably the main thing, and taking it into those end ranges, getting a good stretch on pretty much every movement. If it means for the short period, if that's something you haven't been doing, then transiently, yes, reduce load slightly to get more comfortable in those lengthened positions. I wouldn't say to avoid them. And most injuries occur when people are like doing shit really fucking quick. It's very rare that I see an injury by someone who's like going to be like very slow and controlled and methodical in how they move. So being aware of that, not getting too amped up, staying in control, given the movement and the load that you should be using, the due diligence it needs. But then equally, a lot of people aren't strong enough to get injured either, you know what I mean? So a lot of people can get away with this. This is like polar opposite end of the spectrum. But for people starting out, like, maybe think less and move more weight till you have enough tissue and you're moving enough weight that you could get injured, I think is a different way of looking at things that a lot of people could benefit from. Interestingly, the two questions on my NGL and the anonymous one were relationship based, so single and have you got a girlfriend? I have a girlfriend. Apologies. How confident are you in this prep relative to your last? It's not that I wasn't confident in my last prep, but I think again, just starting position wasn't where it should have been. Like I mentioned, I struggled with being selfish when needed, putting other people ahead of me. That did kind of bite me in the ass. I probably let some of my own values slip slightly. Do I regret it? No, I don't think you should really regret many choices you make, because it's always a learning curve. Given everything that's went on and the amount of stuff that I've learned along the way, going to therapy, reading, conversations with certain individuals, the results kind of speak for themselves, you know what I mean? If you get your head right and you just continue doing what you need to do, the results will follow. And then because of those results, that's what's kind of giving me more confidence when I'm looking at like my start position now to last year. I literally put one on my story today and it's fucking blowing up, loads of people getting interactions, so I put comparisons there, but I think it was like 11 or 12 weeks out last year at 107, and then this year a little over 16 weeks out at like 112. I know I hit a low today of like 111, but it's fucking night and day difference in the visuals. And again, like I said earlier, it's a matter of not microanalyzing, just focusing on what you need to do and allowing that to accumulate over time, and yeah, just kind of being a bodybuilder for years on end, or like yeah, for a long period, and not overanalyzing things. It's that's your best kind of shortcut to success, but equally stop looking for shortcuts. But yeah, that is all of the questions. Really appreciate all of them. Any other questions you guys have, any feedback, like, share, subscribe, interact, really enjoy it. And stay tuned, we'll probably do like a full day of eating potentially in the next one. Peace and love, all the best.